The interesting thing is that Reagan is the president who presides over the end of the Cold War. And he deserves a great deal of credit for that. So does Mikhail Gorbachev. And the fascinating thing is when the Cold War ends, the Russian press secretary says to the American press, "We have just done you a terrible disservice. We have taken away your enemy." So what are we going to do? What are you going to do now? What are you guys going to do? You don't have us to beat up on anymore. Well, we didn't know what to do. So we were kind of all over the place. But one of the things that did happen was that there was a kind of an ability to think about issues that hadn't been thought about for a while. So Bill Clinton runs for president in 1992, and what's his number one issue? National health care. You couldn't talk about national health care as long as you were fighting a Cold War with the Soviet Union, because that meant you were being soft on communism. You were going to practice socialized medicine. Now, the Cold War is over, we won. You can talk about national health care again. Now, the bottom line is the Democratic Party, President Clinton and Mrs. Clinton, blew it. They deserve most of the blame for the fact that plan didn't pass. They didn't handle it very well. And you then go into an administration which essentially gives up its large objectives and starts essentially working primarily on things like 100,000 more police on the streets, legislation that's going to help small issues in small places, but not of a large cosmic nature. Clinton is an incredibly successful president. He gets the economy moving incredibly fast, creates 22% more jobs than existed when he took office. And not only that, he actually ends the deficit and creates a $200 billion surplus by the time he leaves office. The politics is totally up and down. Up and down. In 1992, he gets elected in a three-way race with only 43% of the vote. In 1994, he's trounced because of the health care debacle and Newt Gingrich. In 1996, he comes back. In 1998, word spreads that he had a relationship with Monica Lewinsky, and that basically doesn't help a lot politically. The impeachment process occupies most of 98 into 99, and by the time the man is ready to leave the presidency, he's got a huge public opinion approval, but we ain't going very far. Haven't done very much. Which makes, we then get into the election of 2000, which is probably one of the most important elections in our history, and although Albert Gore won the popular vote by 500,000 votes, because of our system of electoral college and because of our Supreme Court, he lost the election. And George W. Bush essentially made Ronald Reagan look like a piker. Bush's tax cuts were $744 billion to the top 5%, and on nothing, hardly anything, for the bottom 50%. Bush basically renounced the entire philosophy of multilateralism that Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, and George Herbert Walker Bush, who was a practitioner of multilateralism to an extraordinary extent, throws it all out the window. Disowns a bunch of treaties that we've said we're going to sign, like the Kyoto Treaty, like the Non-Proliferation Pact, like the International War Tribunals, the International Court, and stuff like that. And of course, we have the war in Iraq, which turns out to be ultimately as disastrous as the war in Vietnam. So that creates where we come to in 2008, which makes it such an absolutely incredibly important election. Only it's not now just a question of turning one party out and putting another party in. It's basically a problem of all the problems of the past 60 years kind of coming together and hitting the new president, whoever he is, but he happens to be Barack Obama, square in the face. Climate change that we've done nothing about. 47 million people in America without health insurance. An economy that's down the tubes. An unemployment rate that's 10%. Banks that are failing everywhere. And so these are the kind of challenges that we find our president having to deal with. So what are the lessons of this history? First lesson is, we ain't going to get out of this quickly. There's no magic bullet. There's no solution. The New Deal didn't solve the Depression. Barack Obama is not going to solve the global financial crisis. He's going to start maybe to make some changes, but it ain't going to get solved. B, we can't afford World War II. So what do? Are there substitutes somewhere for us to look to? Well, basically it means you're going to try to restructure your thinking about a whole lot of things. One idea is to put a huge amount more money into green jobs. Jobs that are connected to environmental efficiency. They're going to improve the carbon emissions situation, and are also going to put American workers to put them in jobs where they can get decent wages and where those jobs are not going to be exported overseas. That's not going to solve anything, but it's going to be a start. And you're going to talk about basically trying to recreate a different kind of world order, which is much more multilateral, much more based upon understanding and sympathy and respect for different perspectives all around the world. It ain't going to happen fast. It ain't going to happen overnight. And one of the things that I think is most notable is the way in which Obama's approach to all this is to sort of let things percolate, not try to create top-down solutions like Bill and Hillary did with the health care plan. I mean, the biggest problem with Bill and Hillary's health care plan was he never talked to anybody in Congress about it and came out of a task force that had secret meetings that no one knew what was going on. So it was top-down. Obama's is not exactly bottom-up, but it comes out of Congress. It comes out of talking to huge numbers of people. And where does all this come from? What's the most important thing to know about Barack Obama? If you read his book about his childhood and about his growth and his time in Hawaii and the way in which he confronted the issue of race as a source of identity in his life, you come to see someone who is a deep thinker, someone who ruminates a great deal about some of these issues, and someone whose basic political approach comes from his first real job. And what was his first real job? He was a community organizer in Chicago. A community organizer. What does a community organizer do? A community organizer listens to people, goes and says, what's on your mind? What are your concerns? What can we do that will help you? What can you propose that we can do that will help you? I think that's the secret to Barack Obama. He listens, he asks, and then he decides, and then he creates an option. This is not going to be an easy administration. It may not be a successful administration, but it is the most important administration that the United States has had for the last half century. And if it doesn't work, it's not just the United States that's going to go to hell. A lot of other people are too. Thank you.